NTSB begins day 2 of its hearing into the deadly midair crash near Reagan National Airport. Now, back in January, 67 people died when a Black Hawk Army helicopter and passenger plane collided. On day 1 of the hearing, we learned the Black Hawk helicopter was flying higher than it should have been, and its altitude readings were inaccurate. Investigators listened to the audio of air traffic controllers who tried to warn the pilot of the incoming plane.
CRJ in flight. At 2 o'clock, respond to CRJ.
This club has an aircraft in sight, precision separation.
The controller told the helicopter to go behind the plane, but the chopper crew had its microphone on at the same time, so they never heard it. And then the crash happened seconds later. The head of the NTSB blasted the FAA for not taking ownership.
I don't get it. Every sign was there that there was a safety risk, and the tower was telling you that. What you did is you transferred people out instead of taking ownership over the fact that everybody in FAA in the tower was saying there was a problem. Are you kidding me? 67 people are dead. How do you explain that? Fix it. Do better.
Joining me now, Harvey Skolnick, a retired FAA air traffic controller. I have to say, that was like a fiery response, right, from the head of the NTSB. Usually these hearings can be kind of sleepy. Can you talk about what it is she is upset about? What is she seeing in this moment that the rest of us maybe don't fully understand?
Well, the one thing she pointed out was that she thought it was an operation where it was an accident looking for a time to happen. What we didn't hear there was an earlier call that I saw in the transcript where when the pilot initially of the helicopter came over and asked for visual separation and the controller approved it, that immediately put the onus on the helicopter pilot. Whatever it had to do, whether it had to go behind, whether it had to go in front of, whatever it had to do, it was the responsibility of that pilot to make sure it stayed in video view of the RJ and miss it in any way it could. Somehow it lost that focus, if it ever saw the RJ to begin with.
So just to put it in plain speak, at the end of this hearing day, do we know who is at fault, so to speak?
Well, look, I don't think there's any question that the onus is on the PAT-25, the helicopter, to maintain visual separation. Ordinarily, a controller, once he gives that traffic information and clearance to one aircraft, the controller will usually give it to the other aircraft involved, as if to say, American 5342, traffic at 1 o'clock and 5 miles southbound is a military helicopter maintaining visual separation, has you in sight. I didn't hear that in the transcript. It might have helped. Although, with the American lined up for runway 1, circling to the right, saw all the lights of the city, then circling back to the left to land on 33, seeing all the lights of the city. I'm not sure it would have been able to do anything about what ultimately happened.
Another thing that's come up in this conversation is the FAA's aging equipment. I want you to hear Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who's saying this is something he's been working on.
Congress gave us $12.5 billion to start the process. We are in the works of developing the network for laying all new fiber cable. You saw the problem at Newark. That was a telecommunication problem. We're using kind of Windows 95 version of software for your computer. We need to get to today's version of technology.
When you think about this crash, based on what we're hearing, are we talking about a technology issue, an infrastructure issue, or a staffing issue, right, in terms of the air traffic controllers?
Well, I don't think it was staffing in this case. The controller was only working a couple of airplanes. There was no reason that any supervisor wouldn't have combined the positions. The FAA has always had its shortcomings when it comes to staffing, because it always staffed up to the bare minimum. It needs to staff well above the minimum to get all the things done it needs to do with regard to training of new people and training and recurrent training of current controllers. So As far as the equipment is concerned, it is older, but it's still pretty darn good. And I don't think that had anything to do with the incident that happened at Reagan. And as far as taking care of the infrastructure, I'm not sure if the shortage of technical people who maybe had the responsibility to check those connections every day, and then because of the shortage of people, those that changed to every week, don't know if that happens. But it is the kind of thing that happens. The scheduled maintenance usually slips and widens when it needs to be checked every day.
Harvey Skolnick, thanks so much for talking with us.
We are standing by for a new day of an NTSB investigative hearing to try to find out what caused the deadly mid-air collision in Washington, D.C. in January. The collision happened over the Potomac River between a passenger jet approaching Reagan National Airport and a military Black Hawk helicopter. Both crashed into the water, killing everyone on board, 67 people. CNN's Pete Montine at NTSB headquarters. You've been monitoring these hearings. What are the biggest revelations and what do we expect today?
Well, huge revelation so far, John, and even more today. The scope of these hearings are huge and unprecedented. The focus today is really on two major things. The issues in the air traffic control tower at Reagan National Airport. We know that one controller was operating two different positions, broadcasting to commercial flights coming into National Airport and broadcasting to helicopter flights near National Airport. But those pilots of each aircraft, respectively, could not hear each other transmitting to air traffic control, only the controller. And then this will go into the in-cockpit collision avoidance technology and the failures of that technology. We know from the Army that they regularly turned off a technology called ADS-B that provides controllers better fidelity, better clarity into where helicopters are. Those crews would cite security for that reason. Three main revelations yesterday, and these are pretty huge, that the altimeters that show the height of the helicopter above the ground regularly had errors fleet-wide. The National Transportation Safety Board was able to do some tests not that long after the crash. They said that the altimeters in those helicopters would read 80 to 130 feet low, meaning that the crew could have theoretically been higher on that very low altitude helicopter route near Reagan National Airport. Also, we got the transcripts for the first time from the voice recorder on board the Black Hawk helicopter. It detailed that the crew discussed changing course in the moments before the collision. The instructor who was instructing the pilot on this training flight on this route said, "Come left for me, ma'am," and only about a second later, that audio recorder captured the sounds of the collision. And then this other huge revelation from the Army that they admitted in a bombshell admission that the crews of those helicopters near DCA regularly flew below flights coming into land at Reagan National Airport. I asked NTSB Chair Jennifer Hamady if that is indicative of a cultural problem in the Army Aviation Brigade and if the warning signs were ignored. Listen.
Warning signs were ignored or just not known or identified or sought, which is quite tragic. So yeah, I'm angry. Upset, actually.
This has been so technical and so tough. We saw the 11-minute-long video recreation of the crash yesterday here in this hearing room. Many family members are in the audience. You could hear a pin drop as the NTSB showed that recreation. We also heard from family member Doug Lane. He lost his wife and daughter in that crash. He said the transparency here will be a victory for those who have suffered an unimaginable loss. John.
So much new information, Pete. It's great to have you there. Pete Montine at NTSB headquarters. Thank you.